Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous day. If you are just getting started, it's going to be a great day. And if you've already gotten started, well, then you're already on the move. If you don't know me, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana, a wellness advocate. I'm a grad school student studying for my Master's of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, an international bestseller, best-selling author, rather. I have a chapter in a amazing book of 25 women who have overcome amazing different odds to be successful and to grow. And I started Wellness Wednesday because it was on my heart to share tips and maybe encourage others to share about my lifelong journey with depression and anxiety, and just general things that I do and have experienced in terms of being well and increasing my wellness. And it was my hope that this could be a forum for also sharing ideas from others, because we do better when we share tips. Some things work for everybody, some things don't work for everybody. Good morning, Miss Erica. So this is just, I am over a year's worth of episodes. I can't believe it's been that long already. And so happy to be here every Wednesday to share with you. So this is part 3 of our 3-part series about things that get us in trouble. The first one we talked about was triggers. Last week we talked about, I just lost my noodle here. Last week we talked about, I'll get there eventually. I've completely forgotten it, but it's in my notes here somewhere. So 3-part series. Today is Great Expectations, and I am not talking about the book by Charles Dickens. However, that novel does lay out the basic problem with expectations, which is that Pip, who is the main character, inherits money from a secret benefactor. He views this fortune as a stepping stone to marrying the girl of his dreams. But he ultimately learns that money was not necessarily part of that larger plan. And he realizes that he has taken for granted a lot of important relationships and gifts in his life. His expectations robbed him of fully enjoying and appreciating his reality. So expectations are what we think will happen, while reality is what actually transpires. And they rarely match up, leading to disappointment, unhappiness, and anger, and sometimes a lot of other feelings as well. So when I started planning this particular day, Great Expectations, Great Expectations is the first thing that comes to mind anytime I say expectations. And so it kind of launched, just to give you a little preview of what's coming, it kind of launched a whole month's worth of content planning for Wellness Wednesday. Today we're going to talk about Great Expectations. Next week we're going to talk about Thanksgiving. Of course, I know that's a real shocker. And then we're going to do a 4-part series on movies and what kind of wellness message, hopefully specifically Christmas movies, but I'm open to suggestions on movies you'd like me to cover, but movies that have a wellness message or a gratitude message or something that falls into line there. So anyway, back to Great Expectations, right? So in 2016, Forbes magazine ran an article citing 8 unrealistic expectations that will ruin you. And I like these because while the Forbes article was slanted from the business lens, a lot of these are relevant in any other setting as well. And I know that I found myself guilty of probably 4 or 5 of these. So those 8 unrealistic expectations that were cited by Forbes magazine in 2016 are, number 1, life should be fair. Well, I have always had a very, very strange and expanded sense of fairness, but have also learned, like most other people, that that's not always the way things work. Things are not always fair. In fact, they rarely are according to my sense of fairness. So your actions are the only thing that you can control to make a difference. You cannot control, and for me, especially being anxiety ridden, a good portion of my life was spent trying to control things that I could not control. So your actions, your responses, and the way you conduct yourself are the only things that you can control. And the rest of it is not going to seem fair. but you are the only one that can make a difference in your reality, right? So the next thing is mental pictures. Mental pictures can create all kinds of issues, right? For a really simple example on this, I'll talk about dress shopping. In my previous career, there was at least one yearly event where we had a theme and often had to dress up more than usual. And I would get a picture based on the theme in my head of the kind of dress I wanted. And this would launch into a day-long shopping excursion a couple weeks before, on the hunt for this perfect visual picture. And it was rare. Good morning, Miss Paula. I see your little face bubble. I forgot to say, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments to let me know you saw it. So dress shopping, mental pictures, a lot of times. So I would set off on this day-long excursion with this mental picture of the perfect dress that would fit this theme, this visual I had in my head. And more often than not, it was very, very difficult to create that visual in real life. And so often the day-long excursion of shopping would end. There were a couple that ended great. I found exactly what I was looking for, and bam, I was out the door, back home, woo, feeling good about myself. But oftentimes these excursions wound up in this fruitless search for something that maybe wasn't fashionable or just didn't exist in that time. And with a lot of frustration and disappointment and anger because I couldn't find what I wanted. And oftentimes because of anxiety and depression, and that ongoing battle, that would lead to, well, picking myself apart in the mirror, in the dressing room. And so that one little thing would lead to all of these other things that would just make for an awful day, sometimes an awful several days afterwards, where I was picking myself apart in front of the mirror, feeling like I was fat, all these things that kind of tied into my mindset at the time. And it was all because of an expectation in my head of a dress that I was going to find that was going to be perfect for this event, right? So that's just a small example of what I'm talking about. But a lot of times these mental pictures can look like you're going somewhere or you're going to be interacting with someone you haven't seen in a while. Yes, snowball effect. Absolutely, Paula. And you have in your mind how this is going to go or how you think this is going to go. And you may have even rehearsed it over and over and over again, what they're going to say or what they might say and how you're going to respond. And what if this comes up and what if that comes up? And again, those expectations, rarely ever do things actually go that way. So we can often get caught up in these mental pictures, and it creates an unrealistic expectation of what's going to happen or how things are going to go that just never quite looks like what we think it's going to look like. And oftentimes it does lead to a snowball effect, as Paula said. Good morning, Danielle. Good morning, Ann. That is just really hard sometimes to recover from, and can often act as a trigger. So the third thing that Forbes mentioned was opportunities will fall in my lap. This oftentimes, so this is what I call the if it's supposed to happen, it will mentality. And I am a woman of profound faith. We don't get into religious discussion a whole lot here on Wellness Wednesday. Everybody's got different beliefs, and I respect all of those different beliefs. But whatever your faith, whatever your belief is, a lot of times there's a mentality that if it's supposed to happen, if it's meant to be, it's going to be easy. It's just going to fall into place. And there's a lot of different schools of thought on this. But here's the thing. My belief is that whatever you believe in, the universe, God, Buddha, whatever you believe in, we have been given talents and we have been given wisdom and we have been created to move and to make things happen. And so what happens when we get into this, opportunities will just fall into my lap, is A, when they don't, what happens? We're disappointed, we're angry, we don't understand. B, we see somebody else who that opportunity appears to have fallen in their lap and we get jealous. And we get angry again and we get disappointed. And a lot of times that one of two things happens. We either start blaming everything and everyone else or we start blaming ourselves, right? But what it boils down to is failure to take risks or asking for what you want. Because even with that mentality that if it's supposed to happen, it will, if you don't take steps, it's not going to. Listen, I'm in grad school. It took me a while to finally get to the process of applying and doing all those things, but that wasn't just going to happen. A grad school offer wasn't just going to fall in my lap. I had to do the work to get there, and here I am. And once I started the process, it seemed kind of easy. There was a little bit of difficulty making decisions, but I did find that sometimes those decisions made themselves because one school that I really wanted to go to didn't have all the classes I needed to be eligible for licensure in the state of Florida. So a lot of those decisions made themselves, but I actually had to take the step and get started. And if I had approached it with an attitude of it'll just fall in my lap, guess what? I'd still be sitting here talking to you about going to grad school and not even getting started, right? So the opportunities will just fall in my lap mentality is not a great one. And it does set us up for a lot of disappointment and anger, especially when we perceive that it has happened to somebody else, but we don't know what they did in the background to move themselves forward. I can remember many a times, not just in my last job, but in others previous, where I would wait around for a raise. I would work my butt off and I would think, I deserve a raise. They're going to give me a raise. Corporate America, private sector America doesn't necessarily just automatically give you a raise, right? But I often found that if I went to my direct supervisor, or in the case of my last job, created a presentation that showed what I had accomplished and what I was working on and why I deserved that raise, it was often a no-brainer and there was never any argument. So sometimes you have to ask and sometimes you have to do the work, and it will definitely ruin you if you just wait around for things to fall into your lap. So number 4 from Forbes, everyone should like me. Okay, listen, you are not pizza and you are not ice cream, and neither am I. Not everyone is going to like you all of the time. Even the kindest or most successful people in the world have haters. In fact, a lot of times the most successful people in the world have more haters than anybody else. And why is that? Because they're playing big, because they are sticking their neck out there, and they're not assuming. They're doing the work. They're not assuming everybody is going to like them. And they are out there being themselves, doing the work to earn respect and earn attention, and earn what they have. And not everybody understands that. And not everybody is going to like you all the time. We're all individuals, and that's just the way we're made. So having the attitude that everyone should like you sometimes can lead to expectations that really result in getting your feelings hurt when somebody doesn't, and they make it known and you don't understand why. I have had a plethora of people in my life who have just not liked me for any given reason that I could not ever figure out. And believe me, I would spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to figure out the why of why they didn't like me. And at the end of the day, it is their problem, not mine. And I won't even go as far as to say it's their loss, because it's from their perception, so it might not have been a loss at all. From my perception, yes, it may have been. But the most important thing is, again, and I actually had to say this to a friend of mine not long ago who was dealing with some serious fires all in the course of a day's event. You're not pizza. You're not ice cream. You can't make everybody happy. And it's really not reasonable to expect everyone to like you all the time, no matter how great of a person you are, right? Okay, so number 5, people should agree with me. Okay, well, why? Why do you assume that there is only one right answer and you're the one that has it? I frequently have this conversation with people in terms of people who are adamant in their position and others who are adamantly opposed. Their reasoning and their position is based on their lens and what they're looking through and at on their own experiences and the information they have on hand, right? So in their mind, their answer or their solution is absolutely the right and only one, just like in your mind, your answer and your solution is absolutely the only one. So when we approach things with that attitude of people should agree with us, it often leads to argument, expectations, and again, hurt feelings when they don't. So the better way to approach is to get rid of that expectation and instead be open to other people's thoughts and ideas. It doesn't mean you have to change your mind about yours, but it also doesn't mean you have to beat yours into somebody else's head. I had experiences like that with friends and family members who disagreed with me on any given topic, but instead of hearing me, and understanding my point of view and agreeing to disagree, they would listen to me to respond and to react instead of to hear me. And as soon as I would get done speaking, they would come right back at me with whatever it was all over again until it's a constant cycle of what turns into an argument or a debate, right? And that's not healthy for anybody. You don't have to agree, and nobody has to agree with you. Remember, everything we're looking at is from a different perspective and a different lens of experience and information. So number 6, people know what I'm trying to say. Okay, super guilty on this one, especially with people close to me. I have a tendency to tell them things and share things with the expectation that they know what's going on inside my head, right? Nobody knows what's going on inside your head. And so communication, clear communication becomes really key here. Now, you might be able to get away with it with people that are close to you that kind of know how you think, and are probably going to fill in the blanks. But then if they don't do something you thought they would do because of something you shared or something you said, then maybe it's because you didn't really communicate and you assumed they would know what you meant and they didn't. So again, don't assume in your head that they're in your head or that they understand. So if you're sharing information or you're asking them to help you with something or anything like that, whether it's coworkers, friends, loved ones, you might need to be clear. One of the things that I hear the most in my business world is you have to tell people what to do. You can put up a story or a post that talks about sharing, asking them to share their feelings. But if you don't actually ask them to share what they're doing or share their feelings in the comments, often they won't, because we need to be told what to do. We're not clear. We're not inside your head. And so you have to be clear. And of course, always, you don't want to be walking around ordering people to do things. You ask, again, this is a situation of asking or asserting yourself for what you are looking for. So number 7, I think I might have added one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did. Forbes had 8 items and I added the mental pictures because I thought it was important. Okay, so number 7, on the Forbes list was things will make me happy. Things being the crucial thing here. Now I attribute this to what I call destination preoccupation. We're actually going to talk about that in a few weeks. It's on my list. Remember, I told you I'm all over it. I have content planned through the end of the year for you guys that I'm really excited about. So destination preoccupation is something we're going to cover in a few weeks, but essentially what it boils down to is when I get here or when I have this or when that happens, I will be happy. And that creates expectations that just really take you away from the present moment and make it very, very difficult for you to be grateful for and find joy in what you currently have and where you currently are in your journey. So we'll talk about that again much more later. Maybe that was number 6 on the Forbes list. Number 7 on the Forbes list of things that get us in trouble was I can change him or her. Woohoo, this is a biggie. And again, guilty. I often refer to this as savior complex, white knight complex, whatever. If we a lot of times, of course, this happens in relationships, friendships, family members, but more specifically, romantic relationships is a lot of times where this becomes problematic because we get into a relationship with somebody maybe there's just things we don't like about them. Or we have friends or family members that warn us about certain things about their character or about their personalities. And we're like, oh, it's okay. Once we get into this relationship or once we get married or once we have a baby or whatever, they're going to change. That's going to change. It's just because of this situation right now, that's going to be different. It rarely ever is. In fact, oftentimes if you have any kind of serious incompatibilities that show within the first even few months of a relationship, those are not things that are going to change or get better. They're often things that are going to get worse or become more problematic. And you, again, are only responsible for you. I'm only responsible for me, and I may or may not have had this, well, they'll come around or they'll change attitude with a couple of my past relationships. You have to be prepared to accept that person for as they are, and understand that you are not responsible for anything they're going to do. You know, in the case of an alcoholic, for example, you might see that somebody has a bit of a drinking problem when you start dating, and you think, well, if it bothers me and they love me, they're going to change that for me. It's not going to happen. You cannot be the catalyst for that change, except in the situation where the two of you are kind of growing together, and those changes happen naturally through that growth because one of you is setting an example or modeling the example for the other. But that still ends up being a choice the other person makes because that's what they're seeing and that's what they're being exposed to. So in that respect, we set ourselves up for some super huge disappointments when we approach relationships of any kind, friendships, again, family, anything, with the attitude that we can change that person or the things we don't like about that person. And then the final thing on the Forbes list, which is huge again, is I or they are going to fail. And most of this is going to be from the I perspective, but we're going to talk about it a little bit from the they perspective as well. So this puts me in mind of Henry Ford's famous quote, "Whether you think you can or can't, you are right." So here's some little factoids for my fellow nerds. LSU research shows that people who believe in themselves use more metacognitive functions. And what that means is that they approach problems from different angles and adapt as needed, maybe looking for solutions instead of focusing on and freaking out about the problem. I can say from my own experience that yes, as I changed my mindset, the more I started to believe in myself and my capabilities, the more apt I was to find a solution to a problem and in a calm fashion versus reacting and freaking out and going, oh no, what are we going to do about this? You know what I mean? So Harvard research showed back in the 1960s. So some of this research goes back a ways. Harvard research showed back in the 1960s that when teachers were told that certain students, randomly selected, were smart, those children performed better in the classroom and on IQ tests. Now, why do you suppose that is? Presumably because when the teachers were told they were smart, this might smack a little bit of the horn halo effect I talked about a few weeks ago. The teachers viewed them as smarter and quite possibly gave them better feedback, treated them differently, and maybe gave them passes on their failures a little more often because their expectations of those children were higher because they were told by somebody else that those children were particularly smart. Make sense? So this is a place where if your doubt about yourself, if you have a lot of doubts about yourself, this is going to cloud your beliefs and this is going to cloud your ability to perform. You are less likely to achieve your goals if you come into it with skepticism and doubt about whether or not you're even capable, right? I had this conversation. Who'da thunk what? Right? Positive reinforcement creates positivity. What? That's absolutely right, Danielle. So, for example, I'll share the conversation I had with myself this morning. I was laying in bed. I was supposed to go to Jazzercise. Jazzercise starts at 5:45. Your girl did not get up in time. But I didn't get up terribly late. And when I didn't wake up on time and I was going to reset my alarm, I said to myself, no, you still need to get up and work out. So I did. I got up and I got myself ready for a 21-day fixed workout, which is one of my favorites. It's a good solid, this particular one is a good solid upper body workout. So I'm probably not going to be able to wash my hair later, but that's okay. So anyway, the conversation I'm having with myself this morning as I'm starting to poop out during some of these exercises and I'm taking child's pose or just taking a break and I'm beating myself up for it. And I'm telling myself, Donna, why did you do this morning? You know, you should have done this at 4:00 this afternoon because you know that you do better with strength workouts in the afternoon. And then I said to myself, you gotta stop telling yourself this story, Donna, because if I don't believe that I can successfully do these workouts in the morning, guess what? I am less likely to perform well during those workouts, and I'm going to reinforce that belief, right? Negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, just like Danielle just mentioned. So when you are looking at yourself and you are thinking you're going to fail, you are setting yourself up to do exactly that. You truly are. However, when you come at it with the approach, and that's back to Henry Ford, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. The story you tell yourself often has a very, very huge impact on what the story is really going to look like in reality. So your expectations are often your reality. If you think you suck, if you tell yourself you suck and that you're going to fail, chances are you're probably going to. Because the first time something comes up that's a little bit difficult, you're going to be like, see, I told you I can't do it. You know what I mean? You're going to basically throw a little mini tantrum. God knows I've done it 80,000 times. Whereas if you believe that you can do this and that you are capable and you promote yourself to this, you say, this is the goal I'm going to hit. And okay, maybe I didn't hit it in the day like I said I would, but let's give it another try. And you keep looking at it from that perspective, it changes. So same with when you're looking at other people. And that's why this is about expectations, because if we expect more out of people, and this is a slippery slope right here. If we believe in them, we know what they're capable of. We have a tendency to treat them better and give them more positive feedback, just like we do ourselves, and give them more accurate and helpful feedback. But we also have to be cautious here and remember that we can't set expectations way above what they're capable of. And remember that everything they're doing is within their own control and through their own lens. So it gets a little bit of a slippery slope, but it does paint a picture of how expectations can be both helpful and problematic, right? Okay, so another little piece of nerd factoid here is the nocebo effect. Patients who have low expectations for medical procedures, historically, according to research, don't do as well with those medical procedures. They take longer to heal. The medical procedure doesn't work as well, whatever. Whereas the patient that goes in with a high expectation that this is going to work or this is going to be beneficial often do better. Why is that? Because their mindset means they are probably following protocol better. It means they're doing better recovery activities for whatever it is, following instructions more, and have a better attitude towards their recovery from whatever it is. The same applies to doctors. If doctors are using a treatment and they're painting it to the patient as, it's iffy, it might work, not really sure about this, it's kind of new, it is actually less likely to work because now the doctor is painting their own picture and also affecting the patient's expectations, if that makes sense. So, okay, how do we stop? Because I'm starting to run close on time. How do we stop putting our expectations up here? So, number one, are your expectations realistic? Stop and think about whether or not you are expecting someone to behave a certain way because they've demonstrated that's the way they're going to behave, or if it's because you behaved a certain way and you expect them to reciprocate that. That is a big one where we often get in trouble, is because we are a certain way, we think a certain way, or we act a certain way, we expect automatically for people to act the same way towards us or think the same way about us. And that is usually a huge problem. I know it has been for me in the past. We tend to operate, regardless of our beliefs, on that do unto others. And we should continue to do unto others as we would like them to do unto us, but it should not be as we expect them to do unto us. See the difference? We want to treat people like we want to be treated, but it's not reasonable to expect them to treat us the same way. Because not everybody's looking at it through that lens. Be aware of certain phrases and thoughts that run through your head because they are often indicators of of your expectations being where they shouldn't be, which is, it's not okay for me to feel unhappy. It's not okay for me to be sad during the holidays. It's not okay for me to whatever. When you have that kind of thought process and you're judging yourself constantly, that means you have high expectations of yourself to be perfect or okay all the time. That is a sign that you need to reevaluate. Should phrases. This morning, I should have done this workout in the afternoon because I'm better at it in the afternoon. Well, that starts a whole negative story that I'm telling myself that is going to affect my performance in a morning workout every single time. So again, that's just an example, but you get the idea. I should have done this. They should have done that. They should have known what I was thinking or known what I expected. These are problem phrases in your head that are a sign that you're setting expectations and possibly too high. And then if-then thoughts. If this happens, then that will happen. If this happens, then I will feel better, happy, fulfilled, whatever. If I did this, then they should have done that. You see, so these are phrases, again, that are indicators that you may be setting expectations that are unreasonable for yourself or for others. And these are things to be aware of so that you know to stop and step back and evaluate. Number 3, don't create a mental picture of what you don't know, what you can't control. We kind of talked about that. Here's how I think it's going to go. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to rehearse it. This gathering, this whatever, this trip, this encounter with someone I haven't seen in years. This is how it's going to go. I'm going to rehearse 16 different scenarios and how I'm going to respond. And chances are none of those are going to happen. So if you go at it with the attitude, like when I went to Michigan for the first time in 26 years and I was in the process of completing a lot of personal, mental, emotional work on myself. And I found myself starting to rehearse what things were going to look like if I saw my foster parents while I was there, if I saw this person or that person while I was there, and what was that conversation going to look like. But what I was learning in school at the time was teaching me, stop it, don't worry about it. You're going to respond to however it goes when you're actually there. And you know what? I could have rehearsed 1,000 scenarios. Nothing about that trip looked remotely like any of those that I would have rehearsed, right? So again, don't create a mental picture of something you don't know, of what you can't control, because that will go a long way towards keeping you from having unrealistic expectations. Avoid comparisons. Comparison, that's what we talked about last week. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it took me that long to get there. I knew it was in the notes somewhere. So first week was triggers, last week was comparison. So this is where comparison comes into play. Again, when you are comparing, good morning, Miss Dawn, when you are comparing, what you are comparing to may not be reality. And that's going to set your expectations up in a place that they should not be, because you don't know what's really going on in the situation that you're comparing yourself to, or with the person that you're comparing yourself to. So avoid comparisons to keep yourself from setting unrealistic expectations. The double standard technique. This is a great one. If you are struggling with expectations and with disappointment and with anger, think about what you would say to a loved one in the same situation. For example, maybe your loved one, your sister, your best friend, whatever, is feeling like they are a terrible employee because they made a mistake at work. Oh my gosh, they made a mistake. And they're just beating themselves up because they have their self-expectations up here, and they also think their boss's expectations are up here, right? What would you say to them in that situation? So if you are beating yourself up in a situation like this, what would you say to somebody else if they were in those shoes? You might say, hey, you're human. You're not a machine. Humans make mistakes. It's okay. Look at all these great things you've done. Look at how concerned you are about fixing it. It's going to be fine. Where you're not saying that to yourself. So this smacks a little bit of that positive versus negative self-talk. Has a lot to do here. So use the double standard technique on yourself and say, what would I say to a friend that was in this situation? Allow for flexibility. Be sensitive to changing circumstances. A great example of this is instead of, hey, I've been gone all day. I thought you were going to do the dishes. Oh, hey, I see you didn't get to the dishes yet. Are you able to work on that? Do you need help? See the difference? So somebody said they were going to do something and you have this expectation that it's going to be done, but you don't know what might have happened in that time frame between the time it was discussed and the time it was or wasn't done, right? You have no idea what might happen. Sometimes my days, listen, I am self-employed. I have an online business. I'm in grad school. I'm consulting with a company right now. And I have a part-time remote job. So while it may look like I almost never leave the house, a lot of things can happen in a day that can totally change. Where'd my light go? Oh my goodness. I've been on too long. I just lost my light. I didn't know my battery was that low. Hello? All right. Well, we'll just have to go with this, right? So now I'm in the dark. I did not realize my battery was that low. Okay. Anyway, so let's finish this up. So again, allow for flexibility because you don't know what might have happened on that other person's end. Or you may have had things unexpectedly happen to you that kind of derailed the plan. And of course, the final thing to keep from having your expectations too high or having unrealistic ones is gratitude. Go figure. Taking the time to look at what you do have and what is going well, so that you have, and being grateful for where you are at that time, and what you do have can do a lot to keep you from having unrealistic expectations. So, all right, it's a little dark in here. So now I got to figure out how to read these last few lines. So real quick, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So remember this. Give yourself grace and compassion. Accept your emotions and don't beat yourself up about them. Because it's not reasonable for you to expect to just be happy and have the perfect response and reaction and feeling about it all the time. But likewise, remember that others' expectations of you are just the same. They're theirs, not yours. And you can't, it's not reasonable to beat themselves up for whatever their perspective is either. A good conversation might help clear some of that up. Otherwise, you don't have to beat yourself up or hold yourself responsible for how somebody else views you or a situation. Expectations are premeditated resentments. This actually comes from the 12-step program books. And that's true. When we have high expectations, or we have very specific expectations about how something's going to go, when it doesn't go that way, we are setting ourselves up for resentment and anger. So expectations are premeditated resentments. And the final thing I'll leave you with is that expectations can propel you forward towards your dreams and goals. So in that case, they are okay and they are important and not what we're talking about here. So remember that. All right. So if you found this helpful, in the dark or not, please share with anybody. You can share on your Facebook page. You can also share to their messenger if you feel like you want them to see it, but don't want to tag them or single them out. And thank you so much for being here. If you have a Christmas movie that you think paints a specific picture of a wellness topic or sends a certain wellness related message, let me know. Send me a message because I'm going to be working on that 4-part movie series for December. Next week, we're going to talk about gratitude, and I will make sure my battery is ready for a live video with my ring light. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a fabulous Wednesday. Again, I hope you found this helpful. And if you are curious about, if you didn't know that I did the other 2 videos on triggers and comparison, and you want to know where those are, I'll tag you in them so that you can find them easily. Just let me know. And again, I'll see you next week. Have a fabulous day and be well. Bye.